Thank you so much for joining in. Dr. Judy, WTF, What the Freud here, and welcome to my show. And this is a call-in show, everybody, so I hope to hear from you. And if you don't want to call in, put your question in the chat room and I'll get to it. But I would much rather hear your voice and interact with you. So tonight's topic: lies, guilt, shame, and narcissism. Why did I pair those words together? You're about to find out. And I want to start by telling you my definition of narcissism. It's a term that's all over the internet. Every time I get my feed, I see some sort of a blog or some sort of a video or YouTube about narcissism. And from a mind map perspective, narcissism is a system gone wrong. It's based on a system gone wrong where the parents lack empathy and they put their own needs before the needs of their children. And this topples the system upside down, turning it 180 degrees, and it creates all kinds of chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. So we're going to discuss all this, and I take my inspiration for this topic from my patients. I'm sitting in that chair all day long and I see, 20, 25, sometimes 30 people, although I don't think I can do that anymore, a week. And the theme seems to be lying. Why do narcissists lie? And is it a smart idea to bust a narcissist on their lies? And so we're going to talk about that too. And I would definitely like to hear your opinion, because the saying that I'm getting from YouTube advice is you've got to bust the narcissist on their lies. Well, you can, but you're not going to get very far if you do that, because don't forget that they lie in order to protect. And what are they protecting? A lot of things. But one thing they really have covered up really well is their sense of shame and guilt. So they are so good at it because let's go back to the cause of why they have to protect this, is because if you look at my mind map, I'm going to mind map this for you so that you can understand more clearly. If you look at the mind map, you will see panel 1, wounds of childhood. So the light in the background is the manifestation of the best of our best. This is where if we have wonderful childhoods, good attachment to our parents, a lot of nurturance and positive regard, then we shine. And if we don't get that, then the shadows overshadow our ability to grow and our ability to connect and our ability really to love and be loved. So in the case of narcissistic abuse, we're most likely talking about parents who spoil and smother their children and maybe even demean and devalue and destroy them. So on the one hand, they're picking them right up, and then on the other hand, they're dropping them down. And then this bouncing ball creates a very unstable, insecure sense of self. Patients of mine often refer to their inner core as this hollow shell, a shell that is what I refer to as the hole in the soul, because there's not much nurturance in there. There's not much of a sense of I'm okay, and there's not much of a sense of I'm relatable to, because I enjoy people and what they have to give me, so I could receive that and then share it back to them. That's kind of missing in the system of narcissism. It's not a give and take system. So how does this all start? It starts with a toxic bond, okay? And who's the first person a baby bonds to is primary caretaker, usually the mother. And with a narcissistic mother who lacks empathy, the bond is not a two-way street. So at first it might be the baby's really cute and the mother's very interested, but as the baby gets a little bigger, maybe the demands are not so palatable to the mother. And so therefore the mother can't be bothered because now she's too tired. She's got better things to do than attend to the baby. And then the disconnect gets bigger and bigger, and the distance between baby is wider and wider. And the bandwidth of the baby who's reaching for the mother, who wants to connect to the mother, is really bonding to a one-way street. And I call that a one-way bond, and a one-way ticket to hell is what it is. Not only is it hell in the first few years of life, but the hell repeats itself in a what the Freud manner. And that's why I call my show Dr. Judy WTF, What the Freud, because we tend to repeat patterns from the past and replicate them in current relationships. So when the bond between mother and son or mother and daughter is not a secure bond, what happens is that that particular pattern is the bar, is the low bar that then gets replicated in future relationships. And then people will pick people who are distant, lack empathy, are unable to really properly receive and share love. And so the theme that came up in the treatment room most often this week is, why do they lie? Well, why do they lie? They lie because underneath all of that shell of arrogance and confidence and grandiosity, or that shell of quiet smugness, is a fear. Okay, why do we cover up? Lies are a cover up. Lies are, let's look at them as a defense mechanism. What are they defending against? They're defending against shame and guilt. And the shame and guilt may not even be accessible to the person in the here and now. It may be old shame and guilt where mother or father or parents or somebody important guilted them, rubbed their nose in it, put them down, made them feel embarrassed, guilted them if they didn't snap to their commands. And there's the blueprint for shame and guilt. And so this base core shame and guilt is not something that people exactly want to experience. And so then they need to cover this up. So they might cover it up by, let's say, projecting this shame and guilt and making other people feel shameful or guilty, or they may flat out lie about what they're shameful about. And they might be little white lies. And I've been finding that these little white lies are like gaslighting their significant others, and then the person goes crazy, and you wonder why do they lie about little things like, where did you take my watch? No, I didn't take your watch. Well, what's the big deal? Just tell me that you took no, I didn't take my watch. So in a logical way of seeing it, no big deal. If you took the watch, just say, oh, sorry, I took your watch. I'll give it back to you. Here it is. Forgot all about it. But what narcissists perceive is accusation. So somebody says, did you take my watch? They're hearing, you took my watch. You are guilty. Shame on you. You took my watch. And then the person will cover up quickly by manifesting with a lie. No, I didn't. And I liken it to a 3 or 4 year old kid. I was just talking about this the other day, about a kid in a cookie jar. Okay, so kid is incentivized to take the cookie out of the cookie jar, and then mommy comes in and there are crumbs all over the kid's face and all over the sweater, t-shirt, whatever. And then the mother says, little Johnny, did you take the cookie out of the cookie jar? Reminds me of an old song, like, what's that song about? Who stole the cookie from the cookie jar? So it's like that stage of development. And the kid is just frozen like, I didn't do it. Well, why would they freeze? Probably because they've been over punished for it, probably because they've been yelled at, they've been shamed for doing that. So if a mother comes along and says, little Johnny, did you steal the cookie from the cookie jar? And the little kid says, yeah, I actually took the cookie from the cookie jar. You know, it just looks so delicious, Mommy. And I couldn't resist it. I tried and tried, but I broke down. And if the mom had a response like, little Johnny, I totally get it. And, you know, I know it's hard to resist. So let's deal with this, because I certainly don't want you stealing. So why don't you ask Mommy next time? And then we'll set it up so that you could have cookies sometimes, but kind of more on a schedule, or more under a situation where you don't have to steal it. You could just ask for it and we'll all be reasonable about it. Well, in that case, can you see? No guilt, no shame, nothing to really hide. And there's an actual conversation and a pretty clean relationship between the little boy and the mother. The case where the mother is mean about it and is shaming the kid about it and punishing the kid about it, and then daddy steps in and he doubles down on it. Wow, well, now we've got a problem. Okay, so now, do you think that little child would want to tell their parents the truth? Well, they're sort of in a catch-22, aren't they? If they say, yes, I took it, slap. If they say, no, I didn't take it, slap, you're lying. So it's a no-win situation. And I think we've got a call. So thank you so much for calling in, and let's continue this theme of lying, guilt, shame, and narcissism. Hi, what would you like me to call you?
Hi, you can call me Chuck. How are you, Dr. Judy?
Thank you so much, Chuck. I appreciate you calling in. And what is relatable to you about this particular show title?
Well, first of all, I wanted to support you in your show and call in and speak to you. I did speak to you once a while back.
Thank you so much.
And that, I appreciate, your persistence and your consistency in this field. And here I am. And I noticed your show tonight is about guilt, shame, lies. In my opinion, I think most of the shame and the guilt still, even though I logically understand what happened, it's very hard to not feel guilt and shame sometimes. Because in my family system, I was the one to call it out, not loudly. I mean, I was always around. My parents were both narcissistic. My mother more so than my father, but neither had empathy. And, we lived in a very cold, I'm sort of among your generation. I don't know if you had my experience, but there was coldness and there was not a lot of demonstrative emotion or caring. It sounded healthy, but in the end, we were left flat and unattended and unacknowledged.
Yeah.
And my mother was physically abusive as well. She was emotionally, she was sexually off. It was a horrible situation. My father was an extreme enabler, probably what some people would call an inverse narcissist. I'm not really sure I understand what that means fully, but he had no empathy for me. I think they both existed and they found intimacy in their hatred of me and their made up hatred of me.
That was their common thing. Yes, their hatred of you.
In retrospective, I see that now. I do see that. Can I tell you a little story about when I first noticed that?
Oh, please. I want to hear it, because, sometimes we know before we even realize that we know, and there are hints way back in the day. So yes, please.
I remember, all throughout my life feeling strange. Things strange would happen in front of me and I just couldn't understand it. And then later on, in retrospect, when they come to light, it's like, oh my God, I don't know. You tell me what you think. Okay. When I was about 10, I had my bike stolen. I had one of these Schwinn Sting Racer. It was really a nice bike. And, I was a bullied kid because, obviously now I understand why. I was never supported. But I remember, and I had it stolen from church. Anyways, I remember going home and telling my parents, and they didn't say anything, whatever. And then one day in front of everybody, they said, like, well, we're going to go and get you a new bike. And I felt such shame for not having it. And I said, well, I don't want a bike. And that was sort of me. I was always very weird, and I just couldn't understand why I was disagreeable in those ways. But I said, I don't want a bike. And I still remember to this day the moment when my mother and father looked at each other and they almost smiled and laughed. And it was a way of like, see what we were able to do to take away everything from him, to not even want that. And maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but I remember even,
Okay. Okay.
I remember even at 10 years old, I remember 10 years old feeling like, this is not how a parent should, this is weird. And I don't know, was I wrong? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know, but that's just sort of something that, you know, through our lives, and once we understand what happened to us, then we start to remember different things and things start to fit together, and then we're not really sure. And there's a lot of shame in that. Am I overthinking that? Was I wrong in that? Should I be ashamed for even saying that? I don't know. But I will say that I'm alone now, and I do feel the what the Freud in my life. I feel like in the end result, I did choose a lot of people that were not good for me. And I had that sort of like feeling like, but he's so good looking, but he's horrible to you, but he's good looking. You know what I mean? Or he's this and that.
Yeah.
And in the end, now here I am. I'm 64 years old, and I have no one in my life. And I have given so much to people. And I've had, you know, some good relationships. Two of the men in my life died with me. And I don't know if they would have been good for me or not. But I mean, at least I'm lucky to have maybe experienced that. But now at this point in my life, I feel so incredibly cut off from people. And I'm doing so much work and trying so hard to reconnect. And often I feel like, did I become my parents, or do I have no empathy? And I know that that's a very common for, you know, victims and survivors.
You know, first of all, the questioning yourself. Okay, so you do a lot of questioning of yourself. Did I do anything right? You know, am I wrong for thinking this way? Okay, so most people who have severe narcissistic traits do not question themselves. They will point the finger at other people, but they won't even attempt at self-reflection and self-correction, because I'm going to draw a distinction soon between shame and guilt and self-reflection and self-correction. But I was just wondering, were your parents critical? Because you said that when the bike was stolen, they were silent. So they didn't blame you, correct? They didn't criticize you.
They didn't say anything, but when I told them that, you know, when they were going to buy me, but I felt shame that they would have to buy me a new bike. And I said no. And they were like happy about that. And I thought, well, I don't know. I didn't know what to think. And there's many moments in my life with them that to this day, I really can't really figure out.
You know,
and, you know, I did move.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Doc. Well, you know, I did, you know, just in general, I left home. You know, I was basically ousted out of my house. I was kicked out at 16. And it wasn't really, I wasn't a bad kid at all. I was, you know, but I was starting to separate, and that was not allowed. And my mother was the supreme narcissist. But, you know, you mentioned that they never had me take any accountability. That was certainly in my case. There was never any demonstration of any vulnerability or any mistakes or anything. It was automatically mine. I would say I was the family scapegoat, but I left home. I moved, you know, from Michigan to New York at, you know, 40 years ago as a young man. And I maintained relationships with my parents, but it was very cold and distant. And I knew that I could expect nothing from them. I knew that I had to rent a car. I knew that I had to get a hotel. I knew that I could not, I had to have a safety when I was around them.
Let's go back for a minute about their non-response to the bike. Okay, so let's just throw a normal bell-shaped curve out there and pretend that it's another mother who's having more in that bell-shaped curve of a response to this. So I'm imagining that a more connected mother would say, Chuck, what happened to your bike? Right? Like
That never happened. No, that never
okay.
happened. They didn't
So
say
that
anything. I had to say it to them. Yeah.
so you know
I had to
that
tell them.
you had to tell them. So you know the part that's disturbing is I was surprised, number one, that they didn't ask, which is telling. Okay, and then when they said that they were going to buy you another bike and you said no and you went into shame, like you did something wrong, or maybe that you thought that they thought that you lost it, or it was your fault or something like that, and then they smiled. You know, that comment
At each other while
at
looking at
each
each other.
other. Okay, so that's you're the common enemy. So you know, it reminded me of breadcrumbing. So breadcrumbing is something that narcissists do to reduce your desire, your requests. Okay, so they'll just give you a little, and then they'll give you less and less and less until finally you stop asking. So that's what it reminded me of when they said, well, we're going to buy another bike, and you said, no, don't do that, that's okay. I think a more connected parent would say something like, honey, you're a young man, don't you want to have a bike? I don't know what happened to your bike, but you don't deserve to not have fun and go out there and bicycle around. Okay, so that's what you hope to hear. But the fact that they were pleased that you wouldn't
They
fight,
were pleased.
they
They
were
were
pleased.
pleased. I
They were
do feel
pleased.
that way.
Right. And that
Yeah.
to me is very, very disturbing. It's almost like I could see this. It was kind of like a smirky smile on their face.
It was. It was like a smirk.
That's what I'm
It was.
imagining.
And
Kind of like,
there were many occasions like that, and they just would. I guess maybe I'm a sensitive person, and I was always the one that was blamed for being so sensitive. My mother had names for me. She would like, "Oh, you're always crying. You're always," but because it was abusive, and I was always feeling terrible, and they were picking and picking and chipping away at me. And of course, I would reach a boiling point, and I did rebel, and I did get out. But I was always respectful. I was not a bad kid. I got straight A's. I graduated high school and was homeless for a year and a half. And I did that. And nobody knew.
I'm imagining they didn't even acknowledge the good.
They showed up at my graduation a year and a half later, like nothing ever happened.
Wait, I'm sorry, they showed up at your graduation or didn't?
They did, but I hadn't seen them in a year and a half, and I lived a quarter mile away and worked at the grocery store down the street. And there was no contact. They didn't come around me at all. No, and I was maybe 16. I was essentially banned. And then here comes my graduation day, and I'm with my best friend, and his family adopted me unofficially. I lived with them, and they were all there. Okay. And here comes my parents, like nothing, putting on a big show. Mm-hmm. And, I ignored them. So, and
So I want to know more about the feeling that you had after the bike was stolen. Were you let's go into.
I was ashamed that I had lost it.
Okay.
And I felt like I didn't deserve another one. Okay. That's what I felt like. Okay. How dare I even expect another one? And I had. And another thing, my brother recently, the last time I spoke to him, when my parents both passed away, he sent me some boxes from the basement, right, of my stuff that was there. And Dr. Judy, there was nothing in the boxes. It was just junk, paper, no toys, no. The only thing in there was a plaque that I had earned in the science fair, things that I had done, but nothing. I had nothing as a child. I had nothing. So, and my parents gave nothing.
Okay. So I just wanted to kind of look at some aspects of what you're saying. Number one, the guilt and the shame. Narcissistic parents love when their children are guilty and shameful because they can use that to dumb down the life. They could use it to well, you don't deserve it anyway. So you know a little bit about my mind map and panel number
Oh
3,
yeah.
core beliefs,
I
right?
have
So,
your video series. I have the
oh, you
video
do?
series
Okay,
and
okay, really
oh, yeah,
nice. Yeah,
very
okay.
cool.
So look, if you look at panel number 3, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for the family bond, mom, dad bonding, and a dysfunctional bond in your case where the children are not supported, they don't grow, okay? And so nothing really evolves. It's a devolution, not an evolutionary system, right? Okay. And so can you
Yes,
imagine the
yeah.
core beliefs that are piling up in your head when your parents are distant and cold and unaffirming? And then was it your brother who gave you that box of nothingness, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he sent it to me because they had to clear the basement out because they sold the house, my parents' house, I think to another family member when my parents were still alive, so there wouldn't be an estate in
Okay.
the end. And but that part I wasn't told, until I found that out on my own later, which, I suppose I should have expected that. But
Okay. So
yeah, he did.
emptiness and nothingness and core beliefs, I'm imagining that might get laid down in there. I call it a psychovirus because it goes in your head and stays in your head, and then through the mind map system we have to dismantle it and call it the lie that it is. Things like I don't deserve. Okay, so what a prize if parents could get their children to believe that they're not deserving. Well, then they don't have to put out much, don't they? It's like to them the perfect
And they
system.
didn't. And they
Right,
didn't because
right,
in
right. So
reality, I expected
right.
nothing from them. I
No.
only got one phone call from my father at age 60 when my mother died. That's the
Mm,
only time I ever got even a phone
mm.
call from my father. And he was always there, but I knew nothing of him.
And he wasn't,
And
right? He was there, but he
he
wasn't.
wasn't.
Right.
He
Okay.
was there to show everybody he was there, but he was not there for me ever.
So I want to kind
And
of
there still is shame in admitting that. There still is shame in admitting that.
all
You
right.
know?
Well, they're not going to, because you see, for a narcissist, shame and guilt uh, are are buried under there, and they've got to wall it off, and they've got the defense mechanisms going. So to you or to me, self-reflection might be natural, like, oh yeah, I did steal the cookie, I really was hungry and I wanted it, and so no big deal. We can self-reflect and then we can correct on it and say, all right, next time I'll ask. With a narcissistic personality structure, there is no ability to self-reflect and self-correct because they mistake self-reflection and self-correction for criticism. So think about it as non-existent. So they won't say, yeah, let me think about it. Did I take that? Did I lie? Did I steal? They don't
They
want to.
would never. I would never see anything.
No.
I never saw anything like that from them. No.
So
And they were very stoic. They were very, very authoritarian. You know what I mean? They were very strict,
uh-huh.
and and there was no, how dare you have an expectation or a need. I was an indentured servant when I lived in the house from my mother. I was basically there to do all the errands and men's work, and I'm not talking like, a little washing and drying dishes. I'm talking about like, plowing, acres of land and landscaping and all that, and, cutting down trees and swamps at age 11,
I
you
call
know?
that a human doer. Okay, so when we're taught to be human doers and not human beings, then we don't feel valued for who we are. We feel valued for what we do, and that sets us up to be people pleasers. So let's look at this system. The parent that makes the child feel less than, unworthy, guilty, shameful, quiets the child down on the demand end, and then therefore saves themselves the trouble of having to pay money and buy things and give time into the relationship. So from their point of view, it's a perfect system. So they got you where they want you, and they could even live next door to you, and to them, no big deal. Not even call you or see how you're doing? And it's
Oh
so.
no, there was never. My mom never would call. She would
Mhm.
say she would, but she never did. And my mom, I always knew this about my mom, and it broke my heart. I wore rags in junior high school. I had two shirts through, and it's a very hard time, trying to be popular in school. And my mom is having like facelifts and things like that, and claiming
Right,
poverty,
right.
and I had
Okay.
nothing,
Well,
and I
that's
accepted.
and the sad thing is that see with I'm throwing back the bell-shaped curve of some semblance of normalcy in a connected family. If the child is hurting, the parent feels that. And in a narcissistic family, if you're hurting, the parent doesn't feel that because they're not connected to your heart. Okay, so your pain is your pain. It's not my pain. If you're hurting, that's your problem. It's not my problem. If your bike got stolen, well, I'm not even going to bother to even ask why the bike's missing. And how lucky for me that you turned down the offer for me to buy you a new bike. Yep, just save some more money for my facelift. Isn't that a wonderful thing? So the whole
And
system is, yeah.
it set me up for like paying for my own education. I got 3 master's degrees and scholarships and
Oh,
everything. Never
congratulations.
asked,
Okay, okay.
never got a penny from them. And I think that learning that, and that the human doing was the standard. That to me, that was how a human being got
Wow.
existence, and how
Yes.
what they deserved was what they did. And it did help me in life to like be very productive, and I did very well in life. But I'm very
Mhm.
much alone and very sad and disconnected. And all the money in the world is not going to buy that. And I have to do all the work,
Well,
and it's like starting all over. And
so
it's,
you're in, wait, I just want to ask you, you're in New York City, yes?
yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. And so that's a pretty big city. I'm imagining that there are a lot of people in the streets, unlike Sherman Oaks, where it's kind of quiet and the neighbors are more or less to themselves. I'm imagining that you could step out and there are hustling, bustling places to go and so on. So, as you were doing your work with the mind map and dismantling the negative core beliefs, you feel that you were able to at least identify them as lies?
Oh, yes,
You were.
definitely. I
You
do see that they were lies.
okay? Did
And,
you? Mm-hmm.
go ahead.
No, I was just
And,
wondering.
I admitted them. I did.
Okay. Okay.
And after my parents died, I let my brothers and sisters know that I, under no circumstances, needed them to verify how I lived my life and what happened to me. I
Okay.
know, because, they wanted to gaslight me that everything was wonderful and okay. And I was the one, because I got it so severely, I was the one that was able to see the truth. But still, there are days where I feel shameful. I feel, was I wrong? Am I mistaken? Because I see so much of the world. It's like I wasn't abused, I was physically abused. I had bruises and broken bones and things like that, but I won't go into that. But I just felt like that's just how all kids were. And, when I speak to people
That's
in my
the
generation,
so
it
the
kind of was the norm.
right. That's what I mean by parents set the bar. Okay, parents set the bar. Yeah, that's kind of normal to have bruises. Wow, what a norm. So
From
I'm
my mother, you know what I mean?
from your mother. So
You know,
I'm more concerned or wanting for you more than that. Okay, so that's a low bar. So let's put the bar higher than that. Okay, so now you are in possession of master's degrees. You're educated. You
I'm
became
retired.
okay. You're retired now, but you certainly sound like a very intelligent and competent person. And so, and
I
also
did very well.
right, and you're interested in growth. So now you're 54 years young, okay? And so you have life in front of you. And so I want you to go back over the mind maps system and your notes in the journal if you filled one out, and take a look at some
Oh
of
yeah,
those.
I printed them up.
Okay, take a look at some of your negative core beliefs because those are the blockages. Because that's where you get stuck. negative core beliefs are called limiting core beliefs, like, oh, maybe I was wrong, oh, I'm not good enough, or oh no, I'm not special, no, I'm only gonna find people that are gonna reject me and not really connect to me. And it is sort of true that there aren't that many um, people who know how to give and receive love. It's almost like if you don't learn it from your family of origin, you've got to learn and exercise it with other people. But I still want you to do that. Go out there and exercise it with other people. You may not get a perfect mirroring or an attunement there. However, you can't give up. So unfortunately, your parents even made you give up on that. So I'm saying fight that force, fight the give up force, because they quieted you down. So now you still have energy, you have intelligence. Don't be so quiet. Get out there and try
So
new people.
what
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't always have to be, oh, what's wrong with me? Because that's what I'm hearing you default to. What's wrong with
but let
me?
me tell you, I do feel that way, but let me tell you what I have done. I belong to an ACON group therapy for a couple of years now, and I've learned a lot through other people in the group. I've been in recovery. I've learned a lot through that. I'm taking acting classes, and I'm starting a whole new career in this part of my life, which, I got a call back from this one incredible, like, dramatic school. And, it seems like there is a lot out there for me in the future.
Yeah.
But right now it's kind of lonely. I'm feeling the pangs of loneliness, even though I go out daily and I try to, and I do connect with people, and it's my intention to connect with people in positive ways. But I don't find a lot of connections happening over the long term, and connections happening, which would normally happen on a job or, where you see
Look,
the same people.
You didn't have a role model of connections, certainly. And so maybe go over that mind map again and take a look at your limitations and take a look, because you're taking acting classes, you're very out there in the community. Okay, so there are tons of people in New York, tons and tons of people
Oh, yeah.
in New York, right? And you sound like you're a vibrant person. You're an artistic kind of a soul. So I'm sure there are other artistic people. So when you look at somebody, I want you to do an experiment and look at them as if they are a potential person to connect to. And if they don't have the capability, that's fine. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It's just that maybe they don't have the capacity, as many people don't, to take in love or share their feelings, or maybe they're busy, or maybe they're in a relationship, or maybe something's going on with them and they don't have the bandwidth to connect. I just wouldn't give up, especially after all the work that you've done, and how much you put effort into mind mapping and self-discovery and group therapy. Let it bring you now, okay? Let it bring you what you've worked for. Like, don't let the bike was stolen from you, so don't let your family steal from you healthy entitlement. Got it? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm, I'm
no, I agree.
challenging you. I'm challenging you on that. So don't let them steal your healthy entitlement, which sounds something like, I deserve, I deserve that bike. I deserve to be in a healthy relationship. I deserve great friendships. So I'm going to move on so that I can make some other points. I really, really appreciate you calling me and supporting me. It means a lot to me. And I really, really do challenge you about this deserving thing, because I could hear, I don't deserve a great relationship. I don't deserve. Okay. So put that one on your panel 3 um, mind map journal chart. Okay. And stare at it for a while. All right.
All right. I will,
All
doctor.
right.
Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you very much. So I really appreciate that call. And, it really is very meaningful to me, because I've been doing this for a long time. And thank you, audience, for always being so supportive and loving. And suggesting topics and calling in and writing in and your letters and so forth. And as some of you may know me by now, my mission statement is pretty clear. It's healing human disconnect, and in particular, healing from narcissistic abuse and also healing narcissism, because you think that the person who's narcissistic is all that fulfilled. I don't think so. I think they may be filled, but they're not fulfilled. And let me explain the difference. When you eat a bunch of junk food, you feel full, okay? You're full. But if you eat healthy, chock full of nutrient type foods, you're fulfilled. See the difference? Okay. So with a narcissistic structural core, there's that hole in the soul. So when you put anything in there, it just falls through just falls right through, it goes right through, and they just need to fill it more and more and more and more. And it's this endless, bottomless pit. And that's why I call it the vampiring effect. And the narcissist, because they felt at some point in their life, either they were shamed or guilted or not connected with, they've got to cover this up. And so going back to the theme of tonight's show, why do narcissists lie? And do you confront the lies? So number one, hope now you know the answer. They lie because they're ashamed. They don't know how to do a simple thing like, oh, yeah, maybe I did take that. Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry about that. I forgot to return it. They confuse self-reflection and self-correction for finger pointing and blaming and shaming them. It's a very interesting thing and a very difficult one to work through in therapy. And so in terms of confronting the narcissist, which everyone wants to do, like, don't you dare lie to me, I want the truth, I want it now. Yeah, we do want it, but it's what's happening with that kind of approach is that you're reactivating that guilt or shame, or you're activating actually their panel 5 defense mechanism, which is the narcissistic defense, which can get thicker and uglier and meaner, and then they'll start projecting on you, and then they'll make you wrong, and they'll turn the whole system around. And if you look at those orbs, you could see that they're metaphors really for our protective layers, our defense mechanisms. And don't you dare go poking at them. Don't you dare go confronting them, because that wall is going to get thicker. And so my approach to healing narcissism is to go back into panel 1, childhood wounds, where the original injury happened, and address that. And once the person can find that original pain, as I like to call it, the original wounding, and connect with the original pain, and through working with a psychologist, a therapist who's well-versed in recovering from narcissistic abuse, then that person can allow that pain to resurface in a safe place and feel that they don't have to hide it anymore, because it's a safe place where they can expose the original pain and work through the shame and the blame and the embarrassment of what they experienced. And only then can they start to process those feelings like anger and betrayal and so on, and then start to heal from it. But if you take it from the outside and you try to break through that narcissistic wall, no, you're just going to make the wall thicker. So today, one of my patients said, well, I was listening to YouTube and somebody out there said, confront the narcissist. And, you think, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. Confront the narcissist. You don't have to live with lies and so on. It's just that if you want to do a better therapeutic intervention, you don't confront the narcissist, you confront the original area that they got wounded in. And that's what you're really after, because otherwise the shell will build, you won't be able to penetrate it, and then you'll be pretty much banging your head up against the wall. Okay. So I hope you're getting it, that it's a sort of like another way of dealing with it. You have to go under and to the inception point of the pain, and then locate that pain, have that person face the pain, which is really, really difficult because they've spent years projecting it on other people or running from it or hiding under a rock from it or so on. You have to confront that original pain, and then have a skilled therapist, psychologist, hopefully one on the mind map team who knows how to mind map this thing, and help to help the person to work through these bitter feelings so that they can come and put that pain out there in a therapeutic environment, and then finally heal from it without shutting it down, burying it, projecting it, walling it over, lying to cover it up. Okay, so I really wanted people to understand why it is that they're in relationships where they're being gaslit and projected upon and lied to. It's because of this. It's because that person has not yet had a skilled psychologist or a skilled therapist go take that deep dive into the psyche and locate the original pain that could then be dealt with. Okay, hope that makes sense to everybody. Are there any questions in the chat room, or does anyone else have a question about this? Because it's something that I've observed over the years, and you really have to have the right approach to this, or else you can just kind of make it worse than you just make it worse. Wall gets thicker. Any questions in the chat room?
Let me look and see. A lot of comments, especially the caller there was a lot of comments about that. But let me look and see if there's any.
My hope is that I'm able to simplify this process so people can understand, because again, logically you want to confront, and logically you can get very angry at the lie. It's just that they're not living in logic. They're living in psychologic. So there's logic and then there's psychologic, and they don't really move the same way. They don't really function the same way. So you have to get to the psychologic of it, with the emphasis, as I say in my book, on psycho. And by the way, if you haven't downloaded a copy of my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, please do that. Okay. And that is free. All you have to do is go on my website and punch in your email, I believe, and get the book downloaded to you. If you want a hard copy, you can get it on Amazon.com. I've been working really hard with my editor on editing my new video that's coming out titled Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. And it's quite detailed. It's the journey into the pain points so that you can get out of the psychological prison and free yourself of reactions and horrible limiting core beliefs and terrible chaos and defense mechanisms and eventual breakdowns. And it's a complete mind map journey to healing from narcissistic abuse, created by me and hosted by me. Comes, of course, with the journal and the book. And I'm hoping it'll be ready in a couple of months and available to you. So if you have any questions about it, you're free to call me. And otherwise, you can always purchase my mind map video series. And that's on my website as well, the 9-panel mind map Journey to Healing. And that's been around for quite a while. And that's sort of like the basic course, and then the other video that I'm completing is the course on how to heal from this system gone wrong of narcissism. And the core theme here is healing from the wound of apathy, because apathy really kills. It kills the mind, it kills the body, and it kills the soul. And it's the big disconnector. When you just don't care, then what can I say? There's nothing there to connect to. And then if you don't care, then who are people to you? They're just objects for you to use, and as they say, use as narcissistic supply, or make you feel better, or make your sex life better, or make your pockets a little bit thicker. And then it's a power and control kind of game of life, and a game of life of using people. And it might be temporarily great for a little until you run out of fuel, and then you need to reload again, and then it becomes harder and harder to reload and get the fuel. And it's a very destructive system, not only for the victims of narcissistic abuse, but also for the narcissist, because how long can they keep the charade up for? Okay, so please ask about my video, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, coming up soon. And we offer consultations at the Psychological Healing Center. We do Zoom, we do in person, and be happy to discuss whatever the Freud is going on in your life, so that we can get to the pain point, we can get to the cause, and we don't have to waste time on the symptoms, which are just the symptoms of the cause of childhood wounds. And by getting to the cause, we have a more insight, so that we could dismantle the symptoms and free you up, so that you can grow again. So if there are no other questions or comments, I want to wish everyone a wonderful evening. I know that some storms are coming up, and I even read that a tornado might be coming through Los Angeles. So bundle up, keep warm, keep safe, and I'll talk to you next week. Good night, everyone.